Hey guys, I watched a video about a month ago from the Skywatcher Scotland's channel, and he's watching a chemtrail being laid out at night. As he follows the airplane that's laying the chemtrail out, something goes by really fast, zooms by the airplane and the chemtrail really fast. As he's following this chemtrail up, he sees this. And I had made a comment that I'd seen this before, and I did see this before. In fact, I didn't realize it, I've actually seen it twice. Now where I had thought I'd seen this before was in a compilation of UFO videos. And video of this object was taken in broad daylight, and then last night I was watching another video, one of those ancient alien type videos, and I saw this. There it is, right? Right? We all remember this. This is the picture of all the ships that the ancients left us. Of course, the one I'm most interested in these guys. What do you think? What do you think? Is that the same ship? Yeah, I found that really interesting. Hope you did too. Iceland's economy now growing faster than the US and EU after arresting corrupt bankers. Huh, who would have thunk it? So Iceland didn't follow the rest of the world by bailing out their bankers, they arrested them. Now their economy is recovering faster than the EU and the United States. Remember when the United States government told the American people that action was required to save the banks? Action in the form of billions of dollars of debt? Yeah, we remember that. Hundreds of billions of dollars national debt later. We're still chasing our tail, trying to get out of debt. At the time of the 2008 collapse, Iceland was in worse shape than almost any other country in the world. Imagine what America would look like today if we bailed out the victims of the poor banking practices and punished the bankers who were responsible instead of bailing them out. After watching this video, tell us what you think.
We were told we had no other choice. But that's interesting because it turns out there is another choice, and Iceland decided to pursue it. Back in 2008, they also had an epic collapse, and in fact, their banks defaulted on $85 billion. And especially for the size of Iceland, that is gigantic. So they had an enormous problem. In fact, their debt-to-income ratio back in 2008 was an unbelievable 240%. So the size of their problem was even larger than the size of our problem when you look at it per capita and proportionally. So huge problem. Well, then obviously you need to make sure the banks are afloat, right? Otherwise, they can't take the action that they need to take. Here's what the people of Iceland decided instead. No, we're coming for you. And not only did they have protests, but they were starting to throw rocks at the parliament building and saying, we're not going to take this crap. So instead, this is the route that they went. They indicted their former prime minister. And then they decided, well, that's not enough, so let's go ahead and arrest the former chief executives of the three biggest banks. So there they go. And over 200 criminal charges for the bankers. Now, wait, we were told here in the United States, well, you can't do that. Oh, these are the bankers. You can't do that. You'll destroy the economy. In fact, not only did they do that, but the former CEO of one of their top banks, Landsbaeki Islands, got stints in solitary confinement. They Bradley Manninged. We Bradley Manning people who are actually trying to expose what the government is doing wrong. They do it for people who actually destroy their economy. They decided to give actual relief to the homeowners. So what they did was they forgave debt exceeding 110% of home values. Now here in the U.S., that makes people in power's head explode. How could you, these irresponsible people? Who, the bankers who crashed the economy? No, I love those guys. No, the homeowners who got tricked by the bankers into taking these loans with exploding interest rates. No, we can never forgive them. They had a loss equivalent to 18% of the gross domestic product. The banks did. Again, we were told, what 13% of GDP for the banks? What can you do? They don't do it. Don't do it. And the debt was relieved for more than a quarter of the population. Again, here they would say, no way. That's actually helping real citizens. That would be a death knell for the economy. So I guess they were right? Iceland's economy goes down in 2009 to 6.7, down 6.7%. It turns out that in the ensuing years, in 2010, it went up 2.9%, and then in 2011, it went up 2.4%. In fact, it is now doing much better than the European Union. They're beating the rest of the world. But wait, I thought that if we went after the bankers, that our economy would never improve, that we would be in desolate condition and we would be in a depression that we couldn't possibly recover from. It turns out that if you actually help your citizens and jail the bankers, it actually helps your economy greatly. Now, Iceland doesn't even want to join the European Union anymore. They're like, why would we join those losers? Those guys are still trying to prop up their banks, their bank executives. They're still funneling money to all those guys and doing austerity for their citizens. Hey, why don't we nationalize the banks? Why don't we give relief to actual citizens instead of the top banking executives that caused the collapse? Well, they tried it in Iceland, and it worked. So don't let them lie to you and tell you, oh, no, we have to help the bankers. Otherwise, there's no way to help the economy. It is the exact opposite of the truth. If you actually went after the bankers, you would help the economy. And if you needed any more reason to hate Tim Geithner, well, this will do it for you.
Hi everybody, today is October 3rd, 2012. Egypt charges 2 Christian boys with Koran desecration. Residents of Morocco village south of Cairo filed complaints against 2 brothers ages 9 and 10 who were then detained on Tuesday and charged with blasphemy. 2 Coptic Christian boys in Egypt, accused of tearing up a copy of the Koran and urinating on it, have been placed in juvenile detention, a lawyer for the boys said on Wednesday. A series of incidents involving religious insults, including protests last month over a film made in California that mocked the Prophet Muhammad, have increased tension between Muslims and Christians in Egypt. Residents of the village and reporters said a bypasser had on Monday seen the children ripping up pages of a copy of the Quran and urinating on it in front of the local mosque. The passerby took the boys to the local priest who condemned them for the incident, the resident said. But he was not satisfied with what he viewed as the priest's insufficient reprimand and decided to file a complaint with the police. It was not immediately clear why the children had desecrated the Quran, but some residents said the boys were playing and were not incited by anyone to conduct the act. Residents said that the prosecutors had ordered that the boys be detained for 7 days pending an investigation. Security was stepped up around the village on Tuesday to prevent a potential flare-up by sectarian violence after a group of Muslims gathered around the police station where the children were being held to demand their prosecution, residents said. Around 10% of Egypt's 83 million people are Christian, many of whom have been concerned about the political rise of Islamics after a popular uprising ousted Hosni Mubarak last year. I mean, this is prejudice to the extreme. 2 kids, 9 and 10 years old, they have no idea what they're doing. The adults certainly do. Demanding prosecution of children. Why don't they look at what they do in their own homes instead of, going after children? Hi everybody, today is October 4th, 2012. You might have seen this on the news, but I think it's worth repeating. Hundreds, and it actually shouldn't say hundreds, it probably should say thousands, seen at risk in meningitis breakout. The potential scope of the meningitis outbreak that has killed at least 5 people widened dramatically Thursday as health officials warn that hundreds and perhaps thousands of patients who get steroid back injections in 23 states could be at risk. Clinics and medical centers rushed to contact patients who have received the apparently fungus-contaminated shot, and the Food and Drug Administration urged doctors not to use any products at all from the Massachusetts pharmacy that supplied the suspect steroid solution. The time from infection to onset of symptoms is anywhere from a few days to a month, so the number of people stricken could rise. Investigators this week found contamination in a sealed vial of the steroid at the New England company, according to FDA officials. Tests are underway to determine if it is the same fungus blamed for the outbreak. Meningitis is an inflammation of the lining of the brain and spinal cord. Symptoms include severe headaches, nausea, dizziness, and fever. The type of fungal meningitis involved is not contagious like the more common forms. It is caused by a fungus often found in leaf mold and is treated with high-dose antifungal medication. Compounding pharmacies are not regulated as closely as drug manufacturers, and their products are not subject to FDA approval. A national shortage of drugs has forced doctors to seek custom-made alternatives from compounding pharmacies. The steroid suspected in the outbreak has been in short supply.
Let's begin with the latest ruling on the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA. A federal appeals court ruled yesterday that the U.S. government can, for now, indefinitely detain anyone. As most of you know, this is a case that we've been following very closely since it was signed on New Year's Eve after President Obama said he wouldn't sign it. Yesterday's ruling effectively overturns the ruling by U.S. District Court Judge Catherine Forrest to permanently block the controversial provisions in NDAA on the grounds that they violated both protections by the First Amendment and Fifth, due process. First, the government clarifies unequivocally that journalists and activists are in no danger of being detained by the U.S. military. The statute does not affect the existing rights of U.S. citizens or others arrested in the U.S. It also says the language on the injunction appears to go beyond NDAA itself to limit the government's authority under the authorization for the use of military force.
The president has all sorts of powers at his disposal to go after terrorists. Statute after statute after statute, regulation after regulation after regulation that have been passed and implemented since 9/11. So the government has yet to make its case in any evidence. They haven't put in one witness, not one document, not one scrap of evidence, just their briefs. That's all they've put in to show why they need this emergency stay. And we don't agree with it. President Obama, who had spoken out against the NDAA and detaining American citizens, he said clearly, it's 200 years of American history has one governing principle: the military doesn't patrol our streets. This law allows the military to patrol our streets, and it should, as Judge Forrest indicated in a very strong opinion, it should never have been passed and has now been struck down by the district court. I think the Obama administration is showing themselves to be on the wrong side of civil rights here. They shouldn't have gone forward with this appeal. They shouldn't have done it on an emergency basis. They indicated, in fact, to Judge Forrest it was such an emergency that if she didn't grant them a stay, they would go to the Second Circuit, which is what they did. I think that was slightly inappropriate because it had almost the effect of sort of intimidating a federal district court judge.
Remember, France and Russia suspended Monsanto's GMO food? Well, now you can find that the study saying it causes cancer is being played down by officials everywhere. But what's a little harder to find is that those people are in Monsanto's pocket. Infuriating conflict of interest. 3 days after Apostle Dave expressed concern over landslides in China, 19 school children buried alive. Quake activity got interesting when a 5.5 hit the mid-Atlantic ridge yesterday. It's not unheard of, but more common north and south near Ascension Island. But then it kept going. In all my time watching quakes, I have not seen a swarm in this location, certainly not at the 5 magnitude level. You see also that the Virgin Islands area is rocking as well. The quake swarm is constant there, but intensified recently with 4 magnitude tremors. Tough not to assume a correlation. Something interesting here, not really a landslide. The coastline is sinking into the water at alarming rates, steadily 200 feet in the last month alone. This is native territory, and the locals have been quoted to say, this is something different. Space weather quiet, folks, or is it? No, Tony isn't lying about the flares. They are MIA at the moment. But the biggest
filaments have stayed on as well, so what could I possibly mean? Do you see the surface rippling around the dark coronal hole? These are solar tsunamis, and we had about 4 of them last night. They are exactly what they sound like. Google them if you want to know more, but these often produce immense instabilities in the corona above the surface. Instabilities of an electromagnetic nature, which tend to act on the charged particles floating above. We might not see any big eruption, but it happened. Earth off to the left here on stereo A, off to the right there on stereo B. Looking dead on from Earth at the Soho Lasco C3. Watch the clock at the bottom. It's cut out, missing some images, but we have just enough to tell that Earth should take at least a glancing blow sometime this weekend. If we get any Earth-directed flares, this will likely be the culprit, although
I still can't believe how benign the magnetic looks considering the contorted umbra. Good morning, folks. Virgin Islands kept yesterday's quake swarm going strong. North Pole shaking again with a 4.8 near Svalbard. Same mid-Atlantic active zone from yesterday took another one. We had 5 pointers in the Gulf of California, one near Guatemala. Otherwise unreported tremor this morning between Australia and New Zealand, and we had a few rumblings at Mount Etna and Sicily. 3 record nighttime lows for this time of year, and now records for first sleet and ice precipitation witnessed at these stations. Without much else going on, their induced resonance is clearly evident and on time here in the magnetometer, with the always wacky BZ component doing its Stairway to Heaven impression. When these umbra turn the limb, we will have a nearly blank sun. This will be the lone active region down here. It is in decay, but still holding on to both polarities. Update on yesterday's eruption. The solar tsunami that caused the CME down here to the right of the dark coronal hole, it lights up and sends coronal particles racing into space. Some of them are on their way to Earth. Both NASA's and NOAA's Enlil spirals have been updated to reveal the blast, and both show Earth impact this weekend. First time in months this has worked for me. It's NASA's official impact prediction time on ISWA. They are wrong a lot, but it's nice to know what their story is. They say Monday morning for impact, actually. Going to be a crowded space above our atmosphere at that time, with the Draconid meteor shower at the same time and impact from that dark coronal hole. All set for late Sunday or Monday.